All right, let's go ahead and call the Wednesday, June 1st, 2022 Northern Nevada Water Planning Commission meeting to order. If I can get a roll call, please.
Danielle Henderson.
Here, and thanks, Jennifer, for patching me in today.
You're welcome. Michael Widmer.
Present.
Bill Hauk.
Here.
Michael Drinkwater.
Here.
John Enlow. Here. John Flansburgh. Mickey Hazelwood. John Martini. Chris Melton. Here. Dave Solero.
Here.
Mervyn Wright. John Zimmerman. We have a quorum.
All right, that takes us on to item number 2, public comment. Are there any public commenters today? All right, not seeing any. Move on to item number 3, approval of the agenda. Looking for a possible motion. Okay.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Takes us on to item number 4, approval of the minutes for the May 4th, 2022 Northern Nevada Water Planning Commission meeting. Perfect. I've got a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. All right, that'll take us on to item number 5, presentation and introduction of new staff. Ms. Rigdon.
Thank you, Chairman Solero. So I am very pleased, Kim Rigdon for the record, I am very pleased to introduce our new water management planner to the board, Mrs. Birgit Widegren, and I'm going to have her come up to the podium so that you can see who she is. Birgit comes to us with over 25 years of water planning experience, having worked with the Tahoe Regional Planning Agency before her 17 years at NDEP in both the Bureau of Water Pollution Control doing permitting activities and going into water quality planning, where she has supervised the non-point source program there at the state for the last 17 years. Birgit has testified before the legislature. She has filled out grant applications for water planning and projects. She's managed and supervised multiple programs and projects, even in this local community, and she was a significant contributor to the Source Water Watershed Management Plan that was recently awarded a national recognition by the American Water Works Association. So I am very excited to bring Birgit on board, and I wanted to bring her today so that she gets to know who you are, and you'll be seeing a lot more of her. And so with that, I wanted to give her an opportunity to introduce herself.
It's on, okay. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm really excited to take on the role as Water Management Planner in this area and to provide support reporting to Ms. Rigdon, as well as this Commission and the WRWC for all of the important technical water decisions that you're making for this area. So thank you very much, and I look forward to getting to know all of you better as I work for you. Thanks.
All right, welcome. Great, thank you. That will take us on to item number 6, presentation on National Science Foundation project at the University of Nevada, Reno. So I believe we've got Ann Nolan.
University of Nevada, Reno. Thank you for inviting me. Thanks, Kim. So, as you all know, Nevada, the driest state in the nation, is facing numerous challenges when it comes to water. Drought, floods, conflicting water uses, insufficient data, high uncertainty, short-term and long-term planning horizons, and woven through all of these challenges is the need to build trust, communication, and understanding among the various groups involved. I'm here to introduce an exciting new network building opportunity called Nevada Water. Funded by the National Science Foundation, the idea behind Nevada Water is to build a trusted network of water stakeholder partners across Nevada to promote data and information sharing, knowledge creation, and communication and education. Our Nevada Water leadership team is composed of researchers and educators from the University of Nevada, Reno, DRI, Desert Research Institute, Nevada State College, and the Nature Conservancy. Our Nevada Water planning project, this is a 12-month planning project. In this planning phase, we are just getting started. We're in our second month of 12, and so in this planning phase, we are going to be listening to and learning from various groups of water purveyors, providers, users, managers, decision makers, about how we each experience these water-related challenges, what's most important to our respective communities and livelihoods. It's really focused a lot on urban-rural tensions that, and I don't know if you all know this, we know it's the driest state in the nation, but it's also one of the most urban states in the nation, in the sense that most of our population lives in cities. And it's also one of the most rural states in the nation. That is, a lot of our population lives in rural areas. There's not a whole lot of in between. And as far as water goes, that creates a lot of tensions. There are a lot of just very different uses of water across the state. Secondly, in addition to listening to and learning from all these different groups and understanding these challenges, that's kind of a step zero for building a network, right? Is understanding where people are coming from. We want to then brainstorm ideas with these different groups to how a well-funded network of private, public, tribal research, nonprofit, and education water resource partners could come together to facilitate equitable solutions, although I use the word solutions very loosely because I don't think in many cases that we actually have solutions to our water challenges, we have strategies. And then thirdly, our next task would be helping to design the actual water network structure that would provide this trusted information and collect unique and targeted data to answer key questions to address the challenges that we've identified from our partners. And to offer research opportunities for students across the state and help educators create learning content, create a lot more public engagement, community engagement, offer planning grants, and develop equitable strategies and solutions to complex and seemingly intractable water problems. So to accomplish these goals, during this planning process, we're holding online small group discussions, touring the diverse urban and rural parts of Nevada with our network partners so we can kind of see through their eyes what those challenges really look like and have those kind of offline conversations that are really important. And then holding a 2-day workshop conference in partnership with the Nevada Water Resources Association in January of 2023 to discuss what we've learned and really share our visions and workshop all these ideas to develop that Nevada water structure, network structure. Following this 12-month effort, we will craft a 5-year, $15 million follow-on proposal to the National Science Foundation to actually implement this water network. So we're in the design and build stage right now. The network is not about changing water policy or water law. It aims to be a trusted entity that serves the full range of water interests in the state through activities such as data collection, information sharing, online portals, community engagement, pilot studies, planning grants, and things like that. But really, those are my ideas. Those are not necessarily the ideas of all the groups that we're going to be having. So I'm sort of putting forth what our leadership team thinks that the network might look like, but we have to wait and see, right? Because we're building this network. So this 12-month planning process is setting the stage for this next round of funding, which would actually implement that network that we co-design. And if successful, we know there's a lot that can be done with $15 million over 5 years. So our Nevada Water Project aims to be as inclusive as possible. Right now, we have 68 individuals representing 45 different groups. If you're not part of it, we welcome you because this is a great time to get involved. Our stakeholder partner groups are rural, municipal and industrial, state agencies, federal agencies, environmental, college and universities, and tribes. And I think I will stop there and be open for questions.
All right, thank you very much. Are there any questions from any members of the committee? Mr. Enlow.
Hi, Ann, thanks for coming.
Nice to be here, John.
$15 million is a lot of money and a big effort towards something right now that seems rather nebulous. I mean, can you put a little more meat on the bones for us on what you think that money would be utilized for?
I can tell you what I think, but I think that it will be changed as we develop this. So what I think is that we're going to be developing data collection networks where we've got important data gaps, whether it's groundwater or surface water or snowpack. I think that we're not going to be doing things that will alienate some of our partners, like, hey, let's put water meters all over the place, right? We have to be a trusted network. We have to fill those data gaps in ways that people say, yeah, that is the data that we needed to help really pin down this question of how are groundwater levels changing, or what's happening with the snowpack outside of where the snowtell sites are, or what about water quality in these tributaries where we have these other things going on, and right? And so there's that aspect of it. There's also the data uncertainty part of it, which I think is important. We have data, but sometimes people say, those data, we just can't trust them. The uncertainty levels are too high for us to make these decisions. And probably not in the work that you do at TUMWA. I'm sure that I feel like you guys have pretty much nailed things down. But there's a lot of places around Nevada where there's either no data, old data, or it's really too sparse to be able to understand the system as a whole. So I think that is, a really important part of it would be the data collection and analysis part of it. I see also becoming kind of a big table for a lot of the entities that exist out there, right? We've got 45 different entities now, and I suspect that we'll probably have up to 60 by the time we finally get things really going. And each of our water entities has maybe a data portal or a website or a way of conveying information to each other and to the community. So we don't want to usurp that, but we want to be able to sort of provide a big table where we can have these challenging conversations in perhaps a facilitated way. So the idea of generating trust, I think, is really critical. So I know in conversations with some of our rural water users, if there are, for instance, people from NDWR at the table, there's a lot less conversation going on than if they're just among themselves. So the idea is to sort of elevate these conversations among the users and understand in kind of, maybe it's unbridled is a term maybe to use, sort of to really get a sense of what their real issues are. And again, this is not about changing water law or developing policy, but it's about having these challenging conversations around seemingly intractable water issues. So it's not just like a place to meet or having a conversation. It's about developing filling in all those data gaps, combining information from not just Western science, but also local experiential learning. Like people who work with water know water. Just like, I work in the mountains and I know snow. I really know it from a very deep level. And I can kind of give you numbers, but I can also tell you about it. So that kind of knowledge is really important these days, and as well as indigenous knowledge. And so having the tribes at the table is a really important part. And there are some very interesting new ways of combining what we might call traditional Western STEM knowledge with local experiential knowledge and indigenous knowledge in a data science context, like a machine learning context. I'm doing this for a different project. So it's really exciting being able to combine this information, extend our numbers that might be really sparse with this more broader experiential and indigenous knowledge. That's just one aspect of what I think is important. I think also it's important to provide funding for pilot studies and planning activities, things that support perhaps this idea of science with society to address problems, not just science for society. I think academia has had a really a big challenge trying to engage people, because a lot of times we come off as being the smarty pants in the room when we're really not, right? And they call it the loading dock method. Here it is, I made this for you, and now you can use it. Well, that's not the approach that we need to use with this network, right? The network, it has to start with, as I said, like version 0 has to be those conversations where you're developing that sense of community of, we're all in this together because everybody here needs water. So there are a lot of ways that networks can work I don't think we're talking about building buildings, but we're really talking about listening, brainstorming, data, information, knowledge co-creation, and to really elevate a lot of the conversations and to create pathways towards not just sustainable futures, but desirable, tractable, sustainable futures. So I think that's a much smaller subset. That was a long answer, sorry.
All right, any other questions? Mr. Drinkwater.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for being here. So what I heard you, and I'm looking for you to correct me if I heard it wrong. What the concepts you discussed recently in the last couple of minutes, I heard water quantity and all of it potable water, fresh water. So on the pre-consumer level, and did I miss that?
Yeah, no, it's
Okay,
not.
we're talking
It's-
holistic.
Yeah.
Water,
everything.
wastewater,
It's
reclaimed water, stormwater,
yes,
floodwater.
Everything
Okay.
that TUMWRF does, absolutely.
Quality and quantity
Yep.
issues? Okay, so then I
Quality,
just
quantity.
misread that. I apologize.
Yeah, no, it's surface water, groundwater, you name it. It's H2O across the state.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, any other questions?
And we'd love to have TUMWRF as a partner.
I think that was an invitation.
Yeah, it was.
All right, thank you very much. Appreciate the presentation.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks. All right, that'll take us on to item number 7, a report on regional aquifer status of the Truckee Meadows. And Lauren Jones is going to give this one, huh? All right.
Sorry for the confusing swap. All right. Lauren Jones for the record. I'm a hydrogeologist at Truckee Meadows Water Authority, and thank you for having me. I'm just here to give a quick discussion on the regional aquifer status of the Truckee Meadows. Next, I don't know who I'm looking to for the next slide. Okay. Most of you probably already know a lot of this information, so I apologize if it's hearing it again. Here's just a quick map of the Tumbling service area. So all the teal green is our service area. We operate as far south as kind of Washoe Valley, Pleasant Valley area, as far east as Sparks, and then we've got 2 satellite areas, one in Stampmill, which is near Wadsworth, one in the Tracy area, which is kind of off the Mustang exit off of 80, and then as far north as Spanish Springs and Stead. And we've got another satellite area in Fish Springs Ranch, which is in Honey Lake Valley, just kind of between Doyle and Pyramid Lake. And then as far west as Verdi. And then also depicted in this map is our production well locations. So the different colors are, I can't even see them now, and I can't remember. I think the blues are our active ASR, our active production wells that we use. And then the blacks are our active production wells that we also can use as an ASR well. I apologize if I mix it up. I really can't see the colors from here. But we have some select wells within our system that we use in an aquifer storage and recovery program. So during the winter months, we will actually take treated water either from Chalk Bluff or hopefully now our Mount Rose treatment plant, and we'll inject that down select wells to store water to help recover groundwater levels, and then in some smaller areas help with water quality and that kind of thing. And then the other wells depicted are wells that are in the ground and we might use later, but they're currently unequipped or we just don't use them. So now's a good time to just kind of explain, which I'm sure most of you already know, how TUMWA mostly operates our groundwater. We get water from the Trekkie River, obviously, and we maximize that resource first, and then we'll use our production wells supplementally when we need them. So the majority of our production to customers is Trekkie River water, but there are areas where we have to pump our wells a lot more or all the time, but we do rest the wells when we can and then use them for peak supply in other areas. Next slide, please. So in the absence of time, since I can't give you a thorough example of everything that's going to go on, I'm going to do this in kind of bits and pieces. So I'll go over the water levels and pumping histories in these water level management zones. So I'll give you kind of a pumping history in each of these zones, and then also the groundwater level trends, and then I'll give you a hydrograph per hydrologic basin to just kind of show you what the groundwater elevations are actually doing and looking like. So I'll take you through areas all over town, middle of town, south, Washoe Valley, Pleasant Valley. I'll hit all of our satellite areas and then head up Spanish Springs, Lemon Valley, Stead, and Fish Springs area. Next slide, please. So breaking these down, these management zones, which I forgot to mention in the last slide, the management zones are they were created for some of our models, and then some of them are also make sense for our pressure zones or distribution areas. So wells that are clumped together that make sense, water levels and kind of where the water is flowing and how to piece it together in our models. So most of our water level zones are trending upward or at least stable. So that's really good. We want to either see them stable or moving upward. We do have some areas like in Washoe Valley, like at the south end of Washoe Valley, in East Spanish Springs and in Fish Springs Ranch where the water levels are actually trending downward, but we will go over that. But most of them are either stable or upward, which is all good news. Next, please. All right, now we'll start going into each different area and give you kind of a background on pumping in the recent history, how many wells, hydrographs, and the trends. So we're going to start with the central Trekkie Meadows, which is kind of the bulk of Reno, like downtown Reno. We've got 18 production wells in this area. We use these wells when we need them. Again, this is one of our areas where we maximize surface area the most, so we turn these wells on when we need them. And then we've got some of our wells in there, the PCE wells, and we have to pump those a certain amount of time. So those ones do get a little bit more run time. But if you look at the trends, you can see that we pump them when we need them. There isn't a ton of, they stagger a lot between the years, but we have pumped them less in recent years. And that's just kind of maximizing that surface water and using them when we need them. Next slide, please. Here is a hydrograph of our View Street well and nearby monitoring well. So this well is located right in the bulk of town. It's one of our active ASR wells. So you'll see those big peaks that you see are ASR injections, so the water levels really rise. And then the valleys obviously are when the well is pumping. But overall, the trend is very stable in this area, stable or rising. In the last couple of years, it's risen because we've been pumping the wells a little bit less. But this is the kind of general trend in the central Trekkie Meadows, where you've got where you on and off for recharge for some wells, but we pump them and the groundwater levels rebound really quickly and everything is pretty stable or trending upwards. Next, please. All right, now we'll move to West Trekkie Meadows, which is still in hydrographic Basin 87. I forgot to mention that in the last slide. But we've got 5 production wells in this area. These are kind of along the Truckee River there, and we don't pump these wells as much anymore. And the graph where you've got numbers going into the zero there, those are actually years where we recharged more than we pumped. So we don't actually recharge these wells very much anymore, but we have, and we've lessened pumping considerably here. So next slide, please. The groundwater trends were going upward there. Now moving south to the southern area of the Hydrologic Basin 87, we've got 10 production wells in that zone. And this is kind of a unique spot because some of these wells were previously county wells. And those wells, there was no surface area in this particular area being moved. So most of the wells were run all the time when they needed them. And then when Tumwa took over, when there was the merge with Tumwa and Washoe County, we were able to put in infrastructure that allowed us to get a lot of surface water over into these areas that previously hadn't. So that's why you see a huge decline in the pumping from kind of 2015 on. We installed, pump stations and other things to get water into this area. So where we previously saw groundwater level declines, now we're seeing groundwater level moving upwards, which is great. Next slide, please. And then still in Basin 87, this is close to that south area where all the stem-good wells are. Still in Basin 87, we've got 8 production wells here. And these are kind of like south, before you get to the Mount Rose fan area. But everything is really steady here. These wells are used for mainly peak production. They get used on and off. But they are used pretty steadily during the summer months, so that's why you don't see like a trending downwards or anything. But the groundwater levels are really stable here. We pump them, they come back right away, it's really a good little area. Next slide, please. All right, still in Basin 87. This is the Double Diamond area. We've got 3 main production wells here, and you'll see some increasing in pumping trends here, and that's mainly because we outfitted a well that we previously didn't have. So we're pumping it a lot more, plus there's a lot more homes, and the service area requires more water in that area. But still, the groundwater levels are stable. So that's the important thing to note. Next slide, please. Okay, now we're gonna jump down a little bit. We're gonna go down to the Galena area. So these are wells in the aquifer kind of south of Mount Rose Highway. This is in Hydrologic Basin 88. We have 8 production wells here, and this is the same story as the Stimgid wells that I discussed before, where we relied heavily on them when it was just Washoe County, and then once we had infrastructure to move water over, we were able to rest those wells in the, whenever we could, especially in the wintertime, let those groundwater levels rise and then use them when we needed them. So that's why you see the decrease in pumping in the more recent years. Next slide, please. Here's a good depiction of what I mean. So this is from our Tessa East well and nearby monitoring wells. This is, again, just south of Mount Rose Highway. When they were using the wells a lot, you'll see the groundwater levels declining quite a bit, and you get big valleys of groundwater level declines when we're having to pull a lot from those wells. And then you can tell when we started getting surface water over into those areas, because groundwater levels started to recover, the valleys were not as low in the pumping periods. And then actually this year, we recently started recharging in this well. So we previously have not recharged in this basin, or at least this well. And so you see that big peak up at the end there, and that is recharge water, which is very exciting to finally be able to get water in the ground in that area. So this is a promising story. Next slide, please. Back to Hydrologic Basin 87. This is the Arrow Creek area, just kind of across the street from the last area I talked about, the top of Arrow Creek. We've got 3 major production wells here. Same story, previously all groundwater. Now we're able to do both, so we've got the reduction in pumping, and then we're also starting some more active ASR in this area, which has been very helpful for the groundwater levels, and resting the wells has been huge. Next slide, please. So just to show that, I know we already showed some Basin 87 hydrographs, but this is a good story. This is our Arrow Creek 2 well, which is located pretty high up in the Arrow Creek area. And the groundwater levels were really declining pretty considerably up until the point that we were able to, rest the wells, operate using conjunctive use. And then we started recharging this well this year as well. So you see that huge increase in groundwater elevations. At the time that this graph had ended, we were still recharging. So you'll see it come back down a little bit, but at least it's able to start recovering. Next slide. Okay, down to South Washoe Valley in Hydrologic Basin 89. We've got 3 production wells here, and this system operates solely on these production wells. There's no surface water that goes here, so these wells are used when we need them, and that's just the story that it has to be. The groundwater elevations are slightly declining. It's not as bad as it was in the past, but this trend is still slightly downward. Next slide, please. So here is a hydrograph of our Lightning W1 well, and as you can see, it did decline a lot back in the past, and then it kind of made a recovery, and we're still higher than we were in the past, but we're still trending downward in these wells. Not too bad though, but the trend is still downward. Thank you. Okay, moving up a little bit into Pleasant Valley area. So we've got 5 production wells here, same story as Washoe Valley, only operated off of production wells, no surface water here. And so we use them when we need them, but the water levels are stable here. So that's the important part. Next slide. And just to show that, here's one of our wells, Old Washoe Estates 3, where we pump it. We obviously pump these a lot, took a little break, but at least the trends, even when we're not pumping, are stable here. Thank you. Okay, now going north to Spanish Springs area, this is Hydrologic Basin 85. We've got 4 production wells in this area, and just a little history on the Spanish Springs pumping. Previously, we're kind of split Spanish Springs production into the east and west side of Pyramid Highway, and the west side of the highway was pumped previously a lot more than the east side, but now the east side is relied on more heavily because of growth and various other things. But these wells are hit pretty hard. We still try to decrease it and maximize surface water when we can. We want to implement more ASR in this area, but the trends are downward. We did inject more than we pumped one year in 2016, which was promising, and we hope to do that again someday, but we still have to rely on these wells pretty heavily when we need them. Next slide. So just to show what the trends are doing here, this is our Hockings Court well, a nearby monitoring well. This is kind of located off of Vista in East Spanish Springs. And the groundwater trends are definitely declining. Those 2 big peaks you see in kind of January 15 and 16, we did recharge this well for a time, and we plan on doing it again, but it helps to an extent, but we still have declining groundwater levels. So we're hoping to help that out someday. Next slide, please. Now to West Spanish Springs, there's 5 production wells here, and you can see where I was saying we barely pump those wells anymore. And we did recharge for a time on this side. We don't really anymore, but the groundwater levels are stable or increasing here. So next slide, please. Moving on to Lemon Valley in Hydrologic Basin 92A. So this is like the Stead area near the airport. We've got 3 production wells here, and we do not use these wells as much anymore because we have Fish Springs water and other water coming in, so we have been able to rest these wells quite a bit. And this is a very active ASR basin. We always recharge into our Silver Lake well. Previously, it used to be the other 2 wells, but mainly now we do it into one well. So you see a lot of those years we recharged way more than we pumped, which is great to see. And we'll continue to recharge in this area. So the groundwater level trends are increasing here. Next slide. So just to show that, here is our Silver Lake well and nearby monitoring wells. You can see those big peaks for recharge and the deep valleys for pumping, but you can tell how much less we're pumping now because groundwater level trends are moving upward. And, you know, we're just simply not pumping as much. The groundwater levels aren't going as low as they used to. Next slide. Now in East Lemon Valley, this is Hydrologic Basin 92B. We have 5 production wells in this basin. We hardly ever use these wells anymore. Again, part of the Fish Springs implementation, which I'll discuss later, and then other water coming in. And then when things flooded, we stopped pumping them before that. But we don't really use these up until recently in 2021, which isn't really depicted, but we did pump the wells a little bit in 2021. But we've seen a really good recovery in groundwater elevations in this basin. Next slide, which is, here's a good depiction of it in one of our monitoring wells. You see huge declines over the years, and then as soon as we stop pumping and let those groundwater levels recover, they recovered really, really well. And that little dip from last year is when we turned on, I think it was 2 production wells for a different project. So that's what that little dip is, but overall a really good story. Thank you. All right, moving to Verdi, which is the Boomtown area, which is Hydrologic Basin 91. We've got 4 production wells here, and this is a newly acquired system for Tumwa. Previously, this was it was only operated by these wells, so they pumped them when they needed them, and now you see the reduction in pumping in 2021. We're able to pull surface water over to that area, so we're still gonna be using the wells and replacing some of the wells, but there will be some of that using both and being able to maximize the resources we can. Next slide, please. So just to show what's happening out there, even though they've been using these wells a lot and when they needed them, the groundwater elevations are stable here. So this is from a monitoring well, and that just kind of shows how stable it actually is. Next slide, please. All right, now we'll talk about more of our satellite areas. So this is the Tracy segment which is located just kind of off of the Mustang exit off of 80. Our Truckee Canyon wells, you'll see a huge increase in pumping here because we actually outfitted a well that wasn't previously outfitted, and then we re-drilled another well. And there's no other water that comes to this particular service territory, so they use them when they need them. But the groundwater levels are stable, so that's the important part. Next, and then Stamp Mill, which is just further along on 80 near Wadsworth. We've got 2 production wells here. There's no surface water, so it's just these wells. Groundwater elevations are very stable here, but we do need to use them when we need them. So next slide, please. Okay, and then our final area is the Fish Springs Ranch, and that's the one kind of in between Doyle and Pyramid. And there's 5 production wells here. These are really big, productive wells, and they weren't previously used, and we're now using them more, which is why you'll kind of see the groundwater level trend decreasing, but it's still not as low as what it used to be back when they used to pump much more of the irrigation wells in the area. So this water is pumped and supplied to the North Valleys instead area, and it's been really beneficial, as you saw in the previous ones, to benefit groundwater levels. Next slide, please. So this is a hydrograph of many of the monitoring wells in the Fish Springs area. You can see that a long time ago, they were really heavily using those irrigation wells, and the water levels were declining a lot. And then now in the more recent years, there's still a declining trend. Not as bad as they used to be, but since we've been using the wells, they are declining a little bit, but just not as bad. Okay, so now that I've given you kind of an overview of what's happening in the Truckee Meadows, or at least in the Tumwa Service Territory, I wanted to give you just a quick overview of what we have for the future and what we have planned to continue to help our aquifer in the many different service territories that we have. So we are going to continue to use conjunctive use, which is pushing the surface water and using it when we can, resting the wells, letting those water levels come up, and utilizing the 2 resources in a beneficial manner. And then we want to increase our aquifer storage and recovery operations. So we want to increase ASR in areas that have declining water levels. So we want to hit some of those areas that we can, that are feasible, that still have declining water levels. We want to recharge in areas that potentially have undesirable water quality. We have a couple of wells that we do that with already. And then we'll also select wells that are just easier to mechanically store water in. So not all wells are the same. Some wells are a lot harder to put water in than the others. So in areas that it makes sense, where we're not compromising water quality or we're not too close to the river, we'll choose those wells to store water in when we can. A goal of ours is to actually recharge up to 9,000 acre feet a year. And currently, on a good year, we usually recharge between 3,000 to 4,000 acre feet a year. So that is a huge jump. So in order to do this, we're going to have to make many mechanical upgrades to well sites, whether that be valves, pipelines, dual control valves inside wells, those types of things to make it physically possible to get water down the hole. We'll have to amend our current permits or potentially change or add permits to include additional wells. And then our Mount Rose treatment plant off of Mount Rose Highway is operational now. So a huge part of that will be using that water to recharge the wells immediately in the kind of Mount Rose fan area. And that area, again, was heavily used with production wells before. Now we get to utilize some of the conjunctive use. So with the additional recharge and the resting of wells, we should see good groundwater level recovery there. And then also we'll want to implement indirect potable reuse, and we'll use that as a way to get up to that 9,000 acre feet. So we plan on building a treatment plant out in the Stead area to inject A+ quality water into selected wells just kind of north of the airport there, and that'll help us also get up to that 9,000 acre feet. So that's it. Thank you, everybody, for having me. I'm sorry I was a little bit jumbled. It's hard to geographically take you on a tour without jumping around a little bit. But any questions?
All right, are there any questions? Mr. Widmer.
Thank you for the presentation. It was, I'm quite familiar with all those areas.
Figured you'd be.
Is there any interaction with domestic well owners in certain areas that have a history of problems with domestic wells. And,
You like in the Mount Rose area?
well, that would be one spot.
Yeah, we do monitor the domestic wells. I don't think we monitor them as much as we did in the past, but we have that program where we have redrilled or continue to redrill. I don't know.
The well mitigation program.
Yeah, how many we're still doing for that. But there was, in the past for sure. I think a lot of people are seeing recoveries, like in John's well. We've seen recoveries since implementing conjunctive use and whatnot. But yeah, certainly there are areas where there's some interaction between the two.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Not seeing any. Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem.
Very informative. That will take us on to item number 8, discussion with Chapter 4. Ms. Rigdon.
I'll go ahead and take this one, Mr. Chairman. That's okay. Kim, is that good?
That's
Okay.
great, thank you.
Or
thanks.
Jim, as it's listed on the agenda. Go right
Yeah,
ahead.
that is my name on there. Okay, good. I wasn't jumping in where I shouldn't be. Okay, so as far as Chapter 4 goes, I did include the most current version of Chapter 4 that I had to provide to you in your packet. I did receive staff received some comments after that went out in the packet, and we didn't have time to include them and repost. And so some of those comments actually it came from the commission, and some of the comments need some input from agency staff too. So they're still being worked on. So what staff proposes is that once I get all of the comments back from agency staff to address everything that came in as far as comments on that chapter, I'll make a new updated revision to the chapter and email it out to you well prior of your next meeting, and then for your review. And then also I'll include the newly revised chapter in the packet for your next meeting, and then we'll ask you to approve it. We'll ask you to take the action that we had queued up for today's meeting then, and that should be it. It's not done until it's completely done and adopted. So it's always open for the commission's comments. So we always allow for and encourage commissioners to provide us comments, right up until the last minute. And so we're kind of in that kind of a loop right now. So I won't say that that'll be the final at your next meeting, but it will be the most current that we have to include the comments that we received just prior to this meeting. So really, I don't think we need to take any action. You don't need to take any action today unless you want to direct me to do that.
All right. Based on that, are there any comments or direction for Mr. Smitherman on this? Or I'm satisfied with no action today and coming back at our next meeting. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That'll take us on to item number 9, which is Chapter 10, Issues and Action Plans. This one is Ms. Rigdon.
This one is for me. Thank you, Chairman Solero. Kim Rigdon for the record. So there are really no material changes in Chapter 10 since the last meeting where I submitted the draft chapter. I did receive edits yesterday, or comments that I had incorporated edits yesterday. They were pretty minor edits. Page 10-4, section 10.7 on the Tracy segment. There's just been, I deleted the reference to the Reno Technology Park Water Company as it really wasn't relevant to our near-term 5-year action plan goals. So that was taken out. Page 10-27, section 10.18, the water quality protection and remediation. That section was originally given to us, submitted by NDEP, and after staff had a chance to look at it, there was some changes to make it more succinct and represent more of our goals moving forward. So that's been, the narrative on that was changed slightly. So if you want to take a look at that. And those are the only other changes. We did have a few edits, minor edits on the regional flood control management section, but they were more formatting and cleaning it up type edits. So staff is looking for board acceptance of draft Chapter 10 for incorporation into the Regional Water Management Plan, and we'll look for direction, discussion, comments from the board.
All right. Is there anything from the commission? Not seeing any. Is there any public comment first. Okay, got it. Mr. Enlow.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I was the one who provided those two comments yesterday, but I went through chapter 10 and I thought it was in really good shape, so I'm prepared to make a motion to accept chapter 10 as amended.
Have a motion
I'll second that.
and a second. Any other comments? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Great. That will take us on to item number 10, report and discussion on chapters and schedules related to the drafting and presentation of the 2021-2040 Regional Water Management Plan. Ms. Rigdon.
Thank you, Chairman Solero. Kim Rigdon for the record. So with the acceptance of Chapter 10 and some modifications that we'll need on Chapter 4 moving forward, all the draft chapters have been completed, and I'm looking to tentatively schedule the public hearing process. I believe that the chapters, after we go through a couple iterations and receive comments and package this up, that in August, I was hoping we could schedule a tentative public hearing for August 3rd for the Northern Nevada Water Planning Commission, which would be followed by a 30-day review and comment period. And then the comments would be compiled and be brought back to the Northern Nevada Water Planning Commission on September 7th. And then I could schedule a public hearing with the WRWC on October 19th. And if adopted at that point by the WRWC, we can move forward with submitting to the Regional Planning Commission for their 40-day review. And that's pretty much what I have for you since we've completed all the draft chapters. And AECom is working diligently to get the chapters that have already been accepted by the commission packaged. They're doing a really great job. So we're looking at still having July, mid-July, a full draft available for review.
All right, any comments on the schedule or next steps? Seeing none, we'll thank you very much, and we'll go ahead and move on to item number 11, which is action discussion possible recommendation to the Western Region Water Commission for approval of scope of work and funding not to exceed $462,954 from the Regional Water Management Fund for an interlocal agreement with UNR, Nevada Water Innovation Institute. Ms. Rigdon.
Thank you, Chairman. Kim Rigdon for the record. So the Nevada Water Innovations Campus at UNR has submitted a proposal to continue to support One Water Nevada, to continue to determine if advanced purified water can provide long-term benefits to the region. And in that effort, this was previously the A+ leadership contract or agreement that they've had to help us with that. It's been renamed the Regional Water Management Coordination and Support Agreement, so it will be renamed, and it is a new agreement. We're not amending the old agreement. We're entering into a new agreement with UNR for this. The Nevada Water Innovations Institute is partnering with Warner and Associates to continue to provide the technical support, coordination, and leadership for the American Flat Project and continue investigations and demonstration projects in the region. The proposed budget total is $462,954, of which $149,698 is allocated for fiscal year 23. That's already been approved in the tentative services budget and adopted, the overall budget adopted by the WRWC last month. So the remaining subsequent fiscal years would be $157,829 for fiscal year 24 and $155,157 for fiscal year 25. And of course, those would be contingent upon the annual priority setting with the board. The agreement outlines that the future budgets would be contingent upon those. So I've had Lucas put that into the agreement. So as long as the Northern Nevada Water Planning Commission prioritizes those over those next 2 fiscal years, we don't have to amend the contract for those 2 fiscal years. It'll just automatically set it in motion. So staff is seeking a recommendation to the WRWC to approve UNR's scope of work and funding not to exceed $462,954 from the Regional Water Management Fund in accordance with the fiscal year funding outlined in the scope of work. And I'll turn it back to the commission. Thank you.
All right, any comments, questions from the commissioners? All right, is there any public comment on this item? All right. With that, I'll open it up to a motion.
This is John. I would recommend that the commission approve the budget with UNR, Nevada Water Innovation Institute. Can't say enough as far as the help and support that Dr. Pagila in particular and Rick Warner with Warner and Associates have been to us over the last several years. So this is integral in keeping really the American Flat A Plus project and other similar projects moving forward. So I recommend that we approve their contract in the amount of, help me out, please,
$462,954.
$462,954. Thank you.
Sharon, I'll second Mr. Inlow's comments and the motion. We appreciate the help.
Very well, thank you. Motion and a second. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I didn't hear Ms. Henderson, but I'm guessing that was a unanimous.
Yes, it was. Thanks.
Perfect, thank you. That'll move us on to item number 12, which is action, discussion, and possible recommendation to the Western Region Water Commission for approval of scope of work and funding not to exceed $49,398 from the Regional Water Management Fund for professional services agreement with the National Water Research Institute for the One Water Nevada Expert Panel Review of the Advanced Purified Water Program at American Flat. Ms. Rigdon.
Thank you, Chairman. Kim Rigdon for the record. So this is following the previous approval for the A-plus leadership work that's been done. The expert panel, the A-plus expert panel has been working with us also to support One Water Nevada to provide an independent advisory panel or independent review of the projects. And that gives us credibility with the permitting agencies that will be seeking funding or permits and funding with. So the National Water Research Institute has submitted a proposal to perform the independent review of the advanced purified water treatment process and the operating protocols for the full-scale project at American Flat. I'm going to call them NWRI for short, they're a nonprofit 501c3, and they specialize in putting together these expert teams to provide that credible independent review for multiple water projects, and they do this nationwide. The proposed fiscal year 23 budget for the scope of work is $49,398. At the adopted WRWC fiscal 23 budget, and approved tentative services professional detail includes funding for this project, so it's been approved in the budget. And staff is seeking a recommendation to the WRWC to approve NWRI's scope of work and funding not to exceed $49,398 from the Regional Water Management Fund in fiscal year 23. And with that, I'll turn it back over to the commission for questions and discussion.
All right, any questions on this item? Seeing none, do we have any public comment? All right, with that, I'll accept the motion. All right. I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you very much. That takes us on to item number 13, which is action, discussion, and possible recommendation to the Western Regional Water Commission, for approval of scope of work and funding not to exceed $75,000 from the Regional Water Management Fund for an interlocal agreement with the Truckee River Foundation to support the implementation of One Truckee River Management Plan Phase 1. Ms. Rigdon.
Thank you, Chairman. Kim Rigdon for the record. I'm glad it's not just me that gets tongue-tied when I speak publicly. So the Truckee River Foundation has submitted a proposal and scope of work to continue to lead the implementation of the One Truckee River Management Plan. And this includes ongoing efforts to procure funding for the OTR efforts moving forward, continued coordination of vegetation management, it's support for an adult education program to reduce stormwater runoff and non-point source impacts to the river, and phase 2 of the Truckee River Restroom Project. So the proposed budget for the scope of work is $75,000 for fiscal year 23. And again, the adopted WRWC fiscal 23 budget and approved tentative professional services budget detail includes funding to support this, and it's been prioritized by the commission at the priority setting meeting. So staff is seeking a recommendation to the WRWC for approval of the Truckee River Foundation scope of work and funding not to exceed $75,000 for fiscal year 23 from the Regional Water Management Fund with a project completion date of June 30th, 2023. And I'll turn it back over to the commission. Sorry.
No, it's all good. Any questions on this item? Seeing none, is there any public comment? All right, with that, I'll bring it back to the board for possible motion.
Make the motion to approve the contract with Truckee River Foundation in the amount of $75,000. And I just want to commend Iris for doing a great job. Thank you, Iris.
I'll go ahead and second then. So a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Great, thank you very much. That'll take us on to item number 14, which is our program manager's report. Ms. Rigdon.
Thank you, Chairman Solero. So if you had a chance to look at the project status report, which I realized that didn't have the header on it this time. There's always something that I miss on that. I added for your benefit this time around because we're at that point where we're amending contracts or agreements and entering into new agreements. And I wanted you to have an idea of the amendments that are going to be taking place that I won't be bringing to the board because in February 2021, the WRWC gave authority to the program manager to go ahead and execute amendments if they've been approved in the priority setting workshop with the Northern Nevada Water Planning Commission and the budget approval process. So, but I still wanted to make sure that you had an idea of all the different amendments that are going to be taking place on the projects that we're working on, so that if you had any questions or you wanted to know what the status of the project was, or you wanted to see the scope of work, I'm happy to provide that for you. So the first column is the budget amount that was approved in our priority setting. And if there's no comments, it's just an amendment that I'm going to go ahead and execute this month. And in the comment section, you'll see the new agreements that you just approved for the A+ leadership contract, the One Water Expert Panel. It says Carrillo, but it'll say NWRI next time. And the contracts that'll be ending and closing as of the end of June for the next fiscal year. So I wanted to highlight that for you. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to take questions. The financial report, of course, is on the next page. We're well under budget. If there's any questions on that, I'm happy to answer that as well. And with that, I'll turn it back over to the commission.
All right, any questions for Ms. Rigdon on this? All right, not seeing any. We'll go ahead and go on to item number 15, discussion regarding location of possible agenda items for the upcoming Northern Nevada Water Planning Commission meetings. Ms. Rigdon.
I have to find my cheat sheets. I spread my papers all over the place, and then I can't find the one that I need to cheat off of. So our next meeting is supposed to be scheduled for July. I am looking to see if we can cancel the July meeting. It's going to be 4th of July week, and I figured it might be a good week to give me an opportunity to go ahead and work with AECom to package the regional water management plan and get all that put together. There's no other pressing items for the July agenda. So if that's okay, then our next meeting would be on August 3rd, 2022. And that's when I'm planning to facilitate, schedule the regional water management plan hearing and get a presentation on the status of the wastewater source control program that UNR is heading right now. And also the consensus forecast will be forthcoming in August. So those are the 3 items. So with that, I'll turn that back over to you, Chairman Solero.
With a possible cancellation of the July meeting and the need or the schedule to have the public hearing on August 3rd, with the push of Chapter 4, is that going to cause us a problem? We're going to have to act on Chapter 4 prior to having the public hearing. I'm just curious if that timing-wise is going to be an issue or not.
You know, Jim and I discussed that this morning, and maybe Jim can help me out with this, but I was anticipating putting an agenda item before the public hearing to go through Chapter 4 and make sure that all the changes have been accepted on that chapter, and then we can go ahead and proceed with the public hearing after that, if that's acceptable to the board. But I think the comments at this point are we're ready to address those fairly quickly, and I'm not sure that they're substantial material comments. Jim, do you want to add to that?
They're material, but they're pretty brief. They just bring things up to speed as far as current conditions.
Yeah, I'm just concerned that if we post the agenda for a public hearing with the document that hasn't been fully approved, that might get us into an issue with what's actually being posted for the public hearing. That's my only concern there on that.
And we can have a meeting in July if you feel like that's a better approach. That's totally fine.
No, I'm not suggesting that. I just want to make sure that we fully understand that there, with the public hearing and the public meeting, that could potentially maybe cause a problem. I don't know, maybe.
I don't foresee it. I mean, if there were significant changes to the document that the board was uncomfortable with, then we would have to postpone the public hearing. I think that would be the approach we would take. Jim, have you had experience with that?
I don't want to say that I can think of a specific time that we did that, but I know that we have had kind of workshops before a public hearing to make sure that everything is set and ready to go and consistent with what's been posted for the public hearing. So we wouldn't be able to make any changes, but we've got a couple of months to make sure that the commission is okay with the changes that I make and send out to you. So I don't think, I would defer to legal counsel, to Lucas, but I don't think procedurally we'd be doing anything wrong. I think that we would just not be able to make any changes to Chapter 4.
Yeah, I wasn't thinking procedurally. I was just thinking really more of the mechanics of,
Yeah.
how that all works.
Okay.
Well, I'm comfortable.
If you want me to weigh in, again, I think procedurally it would be okay to do it, but I think, to Jim's point, if there were substantial material changes, we might have to put off the public hearing at that point. But if, it sounds like there's enough time, and we'll have a good idea of whether there will be any changes going into the meeting, so I think it should be fine.
All right, thank you very much. Any other questions, comments, concerns? With that, this is an action item, so is there any public comment? All right, I'll leave it up to the board to make a motion on the July meeting then. How's that? Perfect. Is that enough direction for you?
That's enough direction for me.
Very, very good, yeah. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Sounds good. Thank you very much. That will take us on to item number 16, commission comments. Any comments from any of the commissioners? Not seeing any. We'll take that to item 17, staff comments. Any staff comments?
Jim, no staff comments at this time.
Okay. Item 18 is public comment. Any public comment? All right. With that, we'll move on to item number 19, adjournment. We are adjourned.